What's up, everyone? It's Shaletta. I'm here getting a phone for one of my newly minted teenagers with Xfinity Mobile. They've got great options, affordable plans, and solid coverage that works for our whole family. With Xfinity Mobile, my daughter can stay connected with me wherever she goes. And did you know when you sign up, you can get an extra phone line free for a full year? Switch to Xfinity Mobile today for more savings, more smiles, and more ways to stay connected.
Want your boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice. Nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. Designed for more than just therapists, if you're a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve, and it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. To date, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself and be encouraged by it as well. And if you like it, share it with a friend. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on how to effectively eliminate DEI initiatives. Let's get into it. So, if you tuned into last week's podcast and you heard my overview of how the recent political threats and preemptive business efforts to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI programs and initiatives are largely unnecessary, primarily because what they're trying to accomplish can be accomplished in a healthier way. For more on how efforts to ban DEI are unnecessary, feel free to go back and listen to that podcast message in advance. As for today, I'd like to address the issue a little differently. As a marriage and family therapist, I specialize in helping bring about change and improve tense and polarizing relationships by first taking the time to understand the positions on both sides. This includes not only what each side is trying to accomplish, but why they are fighting for what they're fighting for, as well as why they're fighting against what they're fighting against. Inevitably, relationship misunderstandings abound, and a little empathy goes a long way. Often, though, there is even legitimate needs on both sides that deserve being heard and addressed, even if some of those legitimate needs are trying to get met through some illegitimate tactics. All that being said, I'd like to take this moment during this podcast to ensure that those fighting against DEI and actively seeking to ban DEI initiatives also feel heard, also feel validated, and even empathized with. Not only that, but I like to go a step further and actually help you accomplish your goal by providing a few considerations that may help you learn how to effectively eliminate DEI initiatives altogether. It sounds a little unexpected, but hear me out. Consideration number one, always be clear on the legitimate need that you're trying to meet. What do I mean? Well, if the motivation behind your efforts to ban DEI programs and initiatives is to protect professionals everywhere from the negative and polarizing trainings, practices, policies, and procedures that seem to damage healthy workplace relationships, academic institutions, and even more, then I hear you. I'm a fan of protecting people from harmful practices and strengthening relationships. However, you'll need to be outwardly and vocally clear about this regularly. For if you're not clear, then it can be reasonable for many to mistakenly conclude that the reason for your efforts is what they fear it is. That you're motivated by racism, sexism, ableism, ageism, and many other ists and isms intended not to preserve healthy environments and relationships, but instead are motivated by a self-serving desire to maintain a sense of superiority over others, heighten one's sense of self by limiting resources and other sources of support so that others have a more difficult time of achieving the same levels of success. That will be unjustifiable, undefendable. If that is your motivation, then first, thanks for sticking around this far in the podcast. That's awesome. However, with this motivation, you will need to be prepared to accept that anyone on the receiving end of those intentional efforts to limit their support and resources would have a vested interest in opposing you and making your efforts more difficult. Not for reverse superiority impact, but for a fair and sustainable chance at equitable experiences and earned opportunities. Thankfully, I've had the great honor of meeting so many professionals in a variety of fields, including healthcare, corporate environments, education, as well as law enforcement and politics, to know that not everyone fits this category. That being said, I also know that there are many who are more afraid of what they'll lose from DEI initiatives, specifically the comfort of knowing that no matter how discouraging life seems to be at times, they're at least better off than some people. Then it's in your best interest to distinguish yourself from this group of people. In doing so, you give yourself the best chance of not only being heard, but also reducing the polarization you say you're seeking to reduce, and to set the stage for a collaborative DEI eliminating effort moving forward. Which leads to consideration number two: acknowledge the legitimate need DEI initiatives were intended to meet. If your experience has told you that DEI initiatives and programs are often negative, polarizing, and divisive, then before you take steps to eliminate them, it's in your best interest to acknowledge that you understand the positive and legitimate needs they were originally intended to meet. DEI efforts, programs, and initiatives were and are intended to not make those in the minority feel superior, but instead to help everyone embrace and appreciate diverse cultural backgrounds and identities and experiences, to create societal structures that promote equitable experiences for all, and create environments where everyone feels included, no matter their cultural similarities and differences. And that's just the beginning. I've yet to discover a DEI initiative or program that was intended and designed to make people from a certain cultural group feel guilty for hundreds of years of history that came before them, to make people feel more upset and generate even more anger and workplace tension today, and cause people to live in fear from all sides as a result. Let me be clear. There are indeed many hard historical and present truths that need to be acknowledged and heard that don't generate warm, fuzzy feelings. That's not the goal. However, again, the goal isn't shame and blame. Instead, it's change. The question that becomes: how did these unfortunate post mandated DEI training feelings come to be? Well, there are many reasons why, worth its own podcast message, but I can offer this factor to consider. In my role as a marriage and family therapist, I've seen many spouses express themselves in ways that even they would acknowledge were not the way they would have liked to express themselves. However, when asked why, they explained that when they first tried to express their legitimate feelings to their partner, their initial expression went unheard. As the need continued to grow, being unmet, the intensity and desperation they felt that their need continued to grow unmet grew as well. Eventually, what was expressed was not only a desperate expression of the unmet need, but an amplified expression based on the frustration that the need was unheard and met for so long. My goal then is to help the spouses see the legitimate needs underneath those expressions and undesirable expressions of those needs. It's like the popular meme going around where one partner says, seemingly out of the blue, "You weren't even listening to me, were you?" And the person who hears it says, "That's a weird way to start the conversation." If you have any hopes of collaborating to eliminate DEI programs and initiatives, you need to first acknowledge that you see and hear the unmet legitimate needs that were intended to be met since the very beginning. What may seem out of the blue to you, more intense than necessary to you, or worthy of a "you don't have to say it like that" expression, may just be the first time you've heard of a need that they've been trying to get help meeting for years. Which leads to consideration number three: help make the unmet needs DEI initiatives meet sustainably met. Yeah, that's the big one. What do I mean? Well, after acknowledging your legitimate motivation to eliminate seemingly negative and polarizing DEI efforts, and after acknowledging the legitimate unmet needs behind the undesirable expressions of those feelings, it can be clear that efforts to ban DEI initiatives are doomed, as the unmet needs they were intended to meet not only remain unmet, but the desperation that comes from those unmet needs will continue to contribute to undesirable expressions of those needs. Instead, the best way to eliminate DEI initiatives altogether is by eliminating the need they were intended to meet. How can you eliminate the need DEI initiatives were intended to meet? By sufficiently and sustainably meeting those needs in a new way. This again reminds me of my efforts as a marriage and family therapist. Along with many other mental health professionals, can say with a straight face that our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. Sure, I would need to find a new career, but I would consider the world a better place if everyone felt happy in their marriage and family relationships. If the need for professional support no longer existed, not because we banned the profession and left everyone to struggle on their own, but because we were able to find ways to sustainably provide that kind of support without the need for the profession, then I'd happily close my office and find career number two. Until then, marriage counseling efforts are still needed because unmet needs remain. Similarly, you don't solve unmet cultural awareness, competence, value, appreciation, equity, and inclusion needs by banning the discussion and learning about those needs. This makes things worse. Instead, you find ways to work together to sufficiently and sustainably meet those needs in such a way that it's not just a one off benefit for today, but it's in a way that can be so ingrained in society that it can be maintained moving forward. With all these in mind, my hope for you is that you would join me in the effort to work myself out of a job. Sure, in part, my effort to help create lasting marriages, reducing the divorce rate, and eliminating the need for marriage counseling moving forward. Until then, I'll continue to be grateful for the honor to be able to contribute to this hard work. But most importantly, here for today, helping create a society where we no longer need diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and programs. Not because they've been banned and we can't talk about it, but because we made so much progress healthily discussing unmet needs on many sides and healthily identifying sustainable solutions so much so that they're so effective that they no longer need to be maintained. They're habits built in that are consistently applied, not for the charity benefit of some, but for the collective benefit of us all, from every cultural background and identity. That will be a great goal to achieve as a society. Until then, the unmet needs remain. Thus, the DEI initiatives intended to meet those needs must remain as well. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to today's Diversity Dude podcast. If you have any pressing diversity related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame free and empowering guest speaker on this training on this often sensitive topic, then feel free to reach out to me directly at www.diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who could benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well, or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. And don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you and that you share it with someone else so that they can be inspired as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible, at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
You know Shaletta makes you laugh, but did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.